Hello, hello. And so another week begins. Here we go with the Monday poll question at Smerconish.com. Do you believe Jeffrey Epstein had a list of powerful men involved in his alleged sex trafficking operations? More on that in just a moment. Thanks to my friends at Parks Casino and Play Gun Lake. Summertime, the beach, the boat, the lake, the great outdoors. Enjoy casino action and sports betting wherever you are all summer long with the Bet Parks app and the Play Gun Lake app. Live betting on sports, better on the Bet Parks app and the Play Gun Lake app as well. Bet player performances, game props, and more. But whether your favorite team wins or not, there's always another way for you to win on the Bet Parks app and the Play Gun Lake app as well. By the way, check out all the great new games on the Bet Parks app. Huff and Puff More, Mega Fire Blaze, Dwarves and Goblins, the Flintstones, plus Money Horse. You can also play Blackjack, Baccarat, hot online slots, all that action, have some skin in the game, and enhance your enjoyment. You've got to be 21 and in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, or Maryland for the Bet Parks app. You've got to be 21 and in Michigan for the Play Gun Lake app. You love to play, you play to win. You bet. Bet Parks. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. A lot of voting over the weekend on different poll questions at Smerconish.com. On Friday, Admiral Stavridis was my guest, and I asked this question: Russia versus Ukraine war, beginning of the end or end of the beginning? 63.42% said end of the beginning. The rest said beginning of the end, hoping that majority, of which I was a member, are incorrect. And then I did a commentary on Saturday on CNN. Thomas Chatterley Williams was my guest, and we were talking about Zohran Mamdani, but really the focus was to talk about whether it's time to stop checking the box with regard to race and ethnicity, using the Mamdani case as an example. We had, when all was said and done, 46,471 who cast ballots on that. Should racial and ethnic identity categories be eliminated? Roughly 2/3 said yes, 64.13%. And then yesterday, the Sunday poll question, a subject that I'll be getting into in the probably first hour of today's radio program: did last year's assassination attempt, because yesterday was the anniversary, change Donald Trump? 32,998 voted, 76.05% said no, it did not change him. Okay. Back to Jeffrey Epstein. Do you think that Epstein had a list of powerful men involved in his alleged sex trafficking operation? This has really become quite the brouhaha from within MAGA. And why? Because all of the individuals, I mean, it is kind of comical, all of the individuals who are now juggling this hot potato are the ones who created this expectation that there is such a little black book. Mark Caputo, writing for Axios this morning, said President Trump isn't ready to course correct over how his administration has handled the evidence. However, Trump and his advisors are now considering at least 3 ways that he could try to diffuse this issue that for the first time has put him crosswise with his online MAGA base. Everybody in the administration realizes it's a disaster, except perhaps Trump, who asserted in a rambling Truth Social post over the weekend that Epstein is somebody that nobody cares about. That got him ratioed on his own platform, which is a first. It's kind of funny. There was that press conference, the cabinet was surrounding the president last week, and he acted mystified, like, why are people talking about Jeffrey Epstein? Well, I'll tell you why people are talking about Jeffrey Epstein, especially within MAGA. And David French does a really good job of laying it out in the print edition of today's New York Times. Listen to this. In an unsigned memorandum, the department, meaning DOJ, declared that there was no evidence that Jeffrey Epstein, the disgraced, deceased, convicted sexual predator, maintained a client list or that he blackmailed prominent individuals for various misdeeds. The memorandum also declared that Epstein committed suicide. Well, that's jarring to MAGA. Okay? No list. He committed suicide, and also that there was no evidence of any of these things. Most Americans saw this news. This is the way that I reacted, just with like a harumph, like, oh, okay. Most Americans saw this news, if they saw it at all, as barely raising an eyebrow. And then further along, French says, but it detonated like a bomb. In the MAGA universe, pro-Trump influencers with vast audiences couldn't believe what they were reading. After all, they'd been told for years that there was an Epstein client list. Pam Bondi, Trump's attorney general, told Fox News in February that the client list was, quote, sitting on my desk right now to review. And then parenthetically, French says she later claimed she was referring to the Epstein case file, not the list. So there's Bondi. How about J.D. Vance? In October of 2024, J.D. Vance, then a candidate for vice president, said, quote, seriously, we need to release the Epstein list. This is an important thing. Before he was Trump's director of the FBI, Kash Patel told Glenn Beck, a right-wing host, that the FBI had Epstein's black book, that it was under direct control of the director of the FBI. In 2023, Kash Patel told Benny Johnson, a MAGA podcaster, that members of Congress should put on your big boy pants and let us know who the pedophiles are. One more example. September 2024, Dan Bongino, now the deputy director of the FBI, told his listeners, quote, folks, the Epstein client list is a huge deal that would rock the Democratic Party. Now, all of a sudden, oh no, there is no list, and we think the guy committed suicide. Further along, by the way, in this same, one more quote from David French. French says, on the right, the Epstein story became the thinking man's version of the QAnon conspiracy theory, the idea that American society was led by a gang of cannibalistic pedophiles, whereas QAnon was rooted in the imaginary revelations of a shadowy figure who claimed Q security clearance. At least the Epstein story was rooted in some very grim, very real facts. But before you discount this as, and I suspect a lot of people are going to vote today, again, based on how they view President Trump and not thinking in the abstract, might there be such a little black book? I'll tell you whose opinion piece caught my eye, and we had it in the newsletter over the weekend, and I have a lot of respect for her, and I think that she's really bright, and she's no MAGA person. Tina Brown, the former editor of Vanity Fair, writing now for the Free Press. And by the way, there was a preamble to what Tina Brown published in the Free Press, and it said this, from the editors, Tina Brown isn't exactly MAGA, but the former Vanity Fair and New Yorker editor does agree with the president's base on one thing, that when it comes to the death of Jeffrey Epstein, important questions remain unanswered. And then they go on to describe some of the conspiracy theories that have surrounded Epstein. So I was curious to see, okay, what does Tina Brown have to say? She begins this way. It's rare that I agree with the MAGA conspiracy theory loonies, but in the case of the Epstein files, they deserve an answer about why the full folder has not been released. I have never fully believed that Epstein committed suicide, she said. Why does Tina Brown have suspicions as to Jeffrey Epstein's cause of death? Well, further along, she writes this. Dimly remember, I'm picking it up midstream. Pull it from my newsletter because this is really a worthy piece. Well, actually, I should do a better job. She talks about Conchita Sarnoff, who, while Tina was at the Daily Beast, did an investigative piece, actually several pieces that were the first to break the story of the 2008 Epstein sweetheart deal with the U.S. attorney in Florida. Remember that? This jogs the memory. And she asks the question, how did this serial predator, the DOJ report says that Epstein harmed over 1,000 victims, how did he get off with a slap on the wrist, only 2 counts of solicitation of a minor for prostitution? And then explains some of the background as to what went on in that Florida case. She said, after we ran Sarnoff's first piece in 2010, this is really interesting, Epstein called me personally to tell me, quote, she was a very well-known nutcase, meaning Sarnoff, the investigative reporter, and that I should cease and desist. When I barreled ahead anyway, I had a creepy encounter with Epstein a few weeks later. I returned from lunch and was startled to find him sitting in a chair in my glass-walled office in Manhattan's IAC building it seems that he managed to blow through the front desk and arrive unannounced. He then engages in some threatening behavior relative to Tina Brown, not threatening in a violent sense, but threatening in terms of what will happen to her. You'll hear from my lawyers, sort of thing, if they continue to write the pieces they've been writing. And they did. Okay, so let's get back to the question of some of these conspiracy theories. She says, if MAGA is obsessed with powerful pedophiles hidden in the Epstein files, Dems hope that there's a smoking gun about Trump. Yes, in his Man About Town days, Trump partied with Epstein in New York and Palm Beach, where Epstein was a member of Mar-a-Lago. Many think that, oh, not only is there a book, this is not Tina Brown, this is me just hitting you with this. Not only is there a book, but now the administration doesn't want to reveal the book because Trump's name is in it. Tina Brown says, teenage girls have never been Trump's thing. The web of depravity around Epstein has always been hard to unravel because his high-powered network was a mix of those seduced by rides on his private plane, aka the Lolita Express, those looking for murky strategies to evade taxes, those who thought he could cut them into dubious deals or lead them to financial whales, and the serious offenders, big shot sexual predators to whom he trafficked a ceaseless stream of underage girls. That's why his little black book is filled with almost every bold-faced name in page 6. But Tina says, I'm with MAGA, that there are still too many unanswered questions about Epstein's death after he was finally arrested a second time. July 6, 2019, pardon me, upon emerging from his private plane at Teterboro Airport after a trip to Paris, an active FBI agent told Sarnoff, the investigative reporter who was working for the Daily Beast later, who related to me, quote, Epstein will never make it to trial. There are towels on the inside. 5 weeks later, he was dead, hanging from a knotted noose of towels inside his cell at the Metropolitan Correction Center. The multiple coincidences surrounding his death, 2 security guards posted in sight of his cell, falling into a convenient doze, or distracted by online furniture shopping, Epstein's cellmate, usually a must for a suicide risk prisoner, being transferred to another facility and not replaced, the confusion around the deleted or compromised surveillance tapes outside the cell all point to suspicious circumstances, but were finally ruled to be happenstance by the DOJ in 2023. So that's why, among other reasons, Tina Brown thinks there's much more to this. She also points out that there have been at least 5 fatalities, counting Epstein's death, all associated with this case and the sad, sordid world that swirled around him. So I'm not one prone to, I'm always willing to entertain and to talk about conspiracy theories. It's just not my nature to be one prone to buying into them. I'm not inclined to think that there's like a little black book and Pam Bondi had it and Kash Patel had it and Don Bongino. They all know, and now they're putting the kibosh on it. I don't buy into that. So my vote today is a no vote. But Tina Brown holds me back a little bit because she raises some interesting questions surrounding the totality of the Epstein case. Go vote on the Monday poll question. Do you believe Jeffrey Epstein had a list of powerful men involved in his alleged sex trafficking operation? And what I'm really saying here is I'm addressing the David French piece, that there's, the question of, is there one document, one book like this is the mother lode? I don't think that existed. I don't know. Is there a paper trail for all the people who were on his plane and visited his island? Yeah, sure. We've seen drips and drabs of that in the past. But I don't think there's a black book that's now being held back from the public. And it'll be interesting to see if this continues to sort of tear at the fabric of MAGA world. All right, great question. Go vote, go vote, go vote. Thank you for the voting over the weekend. Hit Smerconish.com right now and cast your ballot. And if you're watching on YouTube, thank you for that. Like and subscribe and set yourself up for notifications, okay? Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
fabulous.